In the snowy mountains of Norway, in the year 987 AD, there lived a blacksmith named Einar the Hammerite. Everyone in the village called him Cursed Einar because the hammers he forged weren't normal. They could shatter anything they touched. The villagers lived in fear, but warriors lined up at his forge. With Einar's hammers, who could pierce armor with a single blow and split an enemy's shield in two. But Einar had a great secret. Every night, he would secretly climb the mountains, searching for places where meteors had fallen. He would melt these gifts from the gods in his workshop and mix them with steel using a special technique. Until that fateful night when a young Viking warrior named Magnus came to his door. Magnus had a simple request. "Make me Mjolnir." Einar was surprised. "Mjolnir is just a legend, boy. Only Thor can wield it." But Magnus, with fire in his eyes, said, "I am Thor's son." And that night, Einar began crafting the greatest hammer of his life. Little did he know that this hammer would become a legend that would captivate the entire world 1,000 years. Later, today, I'll tell you the story of this lost hammer and its creator. Our story begins in 987 AD in the small village of Huseby in Norway's Trondheim region. Outside the village, by an icy stream, stood the workshop of a blacksmith named Einar. Einar was no ordinary blacksmith. 20 years earlier, his family had been killed in a Viking raid, and 8-year-old Einar had been left wounded in the forest to die, but he was saved by the village's wise woman, Astrid the Elder. Astrid wasn't an ordinary woman. The villagers believed she could speak with the old gods and see the future. And the night she found Einar, she told them he had a very special destiny. "This child will not merely survive," Astrid had told the village elders. "He is chosen by the gods. There is special power in his hands." As Einar grew up, Astrid didn't just teach him blacksmithing. She gave him much more valuable things: ancient knowledge, old secrets, and most importantly, how to communicate with the gods. "My son," Astrid would say, "blacksmithing is not just shaping metal. It is trapping the power of the gods within. Metal, but there is a price for this." Astrid taught young Einar the secrets handed down from ancient times. Which metals came from the sky, what powers different alloys would give, and most importantly, how to find and work with sky metals. "The gods sometimes send their gifts to Earth," the old woman would say. "These gifts come as fireballs. But be careful, every gift has its price." When Einar was 12, Astrid revealed the first great secret to him. She took him to the hidden sacred place in the forest. In the center of a large stone circle carved with ancient runes, there was a small cave filled with metallic glimmers. "This is a meteor dump," said Astrid. "For centuries, sky stones have been accumulating here, but only the chosen ones can see them." That day, Einar touched his first meteor metal, and he immediately understood. This metal was completely different. From ordinary iron, it burned his hand but at the same time awakened an energy within him. Einar's real education began at age 13. Astrid taught him not just blacksmithing, but spiritual blacksmithing. "Metal is not just physical matter," Astrid would say. "Every metal has a soul, and you must learn to speak with its soul." While Einar received this unusual education, he was also developing normal blacksmithing skills. He learned practical techniques from Olaf, the village's old blacksmith, but received the real secrets from Astrid. His first experiment with meteor metal happened at age 14. Under Astrid's supervision, he made a small knife. But this knife wasn't normal. Everything it cut seemed to melt away. "This metal's power is fire," Astrid explained. "But you must use it carefully. Fire that's too strong can burn its owner too." Around this time, Einar's other abilities began to emerge. Even without seeing a meteor fall, he could sense where it had landed. It was as if he could hear the metals calling to him. "This is your special gift," said Astrid. "The gods chose you because you can find their gifts." At 15, Einar was already going meteor hunting alone at night. He discovered that each meteor metal had different properties. Some were very hard, others flexible, and some showed strange magnetic properties. At 16, Astrid revealed the greatest secret to him, the Mjolnir formula. "Einar, a day will come," said the old woman from her deathbed. "Thor's true heir will come to you. Then you will create the greatest work of your life. But remember, Mjolnir chooses only the worthy." When Astrid died, she left Einar a secret. Parchment. Written on it in runes was a formula, the recipe for how to make the real Mjolnir. After Astrid's death, 17-year-old Einar became the village blacksmith. But he was no ordinary blacksmith anymore. The first meteor metal hammer he made created a small shock in the village. When farmer Gunnar worked with this hammer, he split a huge rock in two with a single blow. "This hammer is cursed," shouted Father Eric, the village priest. "It will bring God's wrath upon us." But the warriors thought very differently. Ragnar, a young Viking, tested the hammer and was able to shatter the wooden part of an enemy shield with one blow and crack the metal part. "This hammer is the gods' work," Ragnar had said. "I've never seen a hammer with such power." Word spread quickly, and warriors began coming from distant regions. Each customer made different requests. Jarl Svein had said, "Make me a hammer that will frighten my enemies." Warrior Bjorn had requested, "I need a shield-piercing hammer." Hunter Thorstein had asked, "Make me a hammer that's silent but powerful." For hunting, Einar began using different meteor metals for each customer. He now knew that each metal had different properties. Reddish meteors gave power, silver ones provided sharpness, blue glinting ones showed electrical properties. While making each hammer, he applied the ancient rituals Astrid had taught him. He sang old runic songs while forging, prayed to the gods, and waited for special times. Hammers made during the full moon came out most powerful. Those made during the new moon were lighter but very sharp. Those made during lightning storms had electrical powers. Within a year, Einar's fame had spread throughout all of Norway. Villagers called him Cursed Einar because his creations were so powerful. But warriors gave him the title Hammer Master or Smith of the Gods. As Einar aged, he learned the secrets of meteor metals even more deeply. By age 20, he wasn't just finding meteors, but could predict where they came from and what properties they would have. Meteors that came in winter had harder metals. Those that fell in summer were more flexible. Those that fell on stormy nights showed electrical properties. The most mysterious were the very rare rainbow meteors. These gave off glimmers in 7 different colors and contained 7 different metal alloys. Einar only saw these meteors once or twice a year. When he found them, he stored them very carefully. Because according to Astrid's formula, the real Mjolnir could only be made from 7 different meteor metals. At age 22, Einar made a great discovery. The places where meteors fell weren't completely random. They fell more often near old Viking temples. This discovery made him think, were the ancient gods really sending these metals? While Einar was searching for answers to this question, a strange visitor came to the village. An old, long-bearded, one-eyed man. He introduced himself as Grimrir. "You're Einar, aren't you?" said the old man, the child raised by Astrid. Einar was surprised. "Did you know Astrid? I knew her very well. She was a very special woman, and she taught you very special things." That night, Grimrir revealed the true secret of meteor metals to Einar. "These metals don't all come from the same place," said the old man. "Each is a gift from different gods. Odin's metal gives war power. Thor's gives lightning power. Freyr's gives fertility. Double quotes. But why do they fall to me?" Einar asked. Grimrir smiled. "Because you are chosen, and soon you'll need to be ready for your great work." On a cold winter night, at the end of 987, while Einar was classifying meteor metals in his workshop, there was a knock at his door. When he opened it, he saw a tall, red-haired young warrior standing before him. This wasn't just any ordinary warrior. The man was very powerfully built, with deep determination in his eyes. Most striking was the hammer-shaped birthmark naturally formed on his left shoulder. "I am Magnus Eriksson," said the young man. "I come from Bergen. I need to speak with you." Einar let the young man in. There was something different about Magnus. He wasn't like other warriors. He had not just physical strength, but also a spiritual. "Wait, make me Mjolnir," said Magnus directly. Einar was surprised. Most customers wanted powerful hammers, but none had ever directly asked for Mjolnir. "Mjolnir is just a legend, son. Only Thor can wield it. I'm just an ordinary blacksmith." Magnus smiled, but there was sadness in his smile. "You're not ordinary, Einar. The hammers you make are legendary. All of Norway talks about you. And I am Thor's son." When Einar heard these words, his heart raced. Magnus didn't seem to be joking. Are you really saying you're Thor's son?" Magnus began telling his story. His story was both tragic and incredible. "My mother Ingrid was a powerful woman living in Bergen. She was the village's strongest warrior. No one could match her. They say one stormy night, while wandering in the mountains, she encountered a mysterious warrior." Magnus continued. "This warrior was very tall, red-haired, and had a tremendous hammer in his hand. When my mother asked who he was, he said, 'I am Thor.' They were together that night. Thor disappeared the next morning, but my mother became pregnant. When she gave birth to me, lightning struck the sky the moment I was born, and look." Magnus removed his shirt and showed Einar. On his arms and back were ancient runic tattoos, but these weren't normal tattoos. They seemed to be there from birth. "These tattoos appeared the moment I was born," said Magnus. "My mother said they were Thor's signs." Einar looked at the tattoos and was amazed. These were the same runic symbols from Astrid's parchment. "Where is your mother now?" Einar asked. Magnus's face darkened. "She died 3 years ago. But when she died, she gave me a mission. Find Mjolnir and protect Norway," she said. "So I found you." That night, Magnus gave Einar more details. Stories of the extraordinary strength he'd shown since childhood, the massive stones he'd lifted with one hand, the energy he felt during lightning strikes. "On stormy nights I go outside," said Magnus. "When lightning strikes, I feel energy. In my body, it's like electricity flowing." As Einar listened, he remembered old Astrid's words. "A day will come when Thor's true heir will come to you. Then you will create the greatest work of your life." Perhaps that time had come. Einar couldn't sleep that night. Magnus's story was very convincing, but it was also a very risky endeavor. The next morning, he asked Magnus, "Why do you want Mjolnir? What's the real reason?" Magnus said with a serious expression, "Because a great war is approaching. The Danes don't just want to fight us. They want to conquer all of Norway and enslave our people. I need the power of the gods to stop them." "An ordinary war hammer would serve your purpose," said Einar. "No, it wouldn't. Because the Danes have sorcerers. 2, they strengthen their weapons with evil magic. I must gain the same power, but for good." Magnus seemed right. And Einar remembered Astrid's parchment. Perhaps this was the destiny awaiting him. "If you want the real Mjolnir," said Einar, "this will be a very long and dangerous process. Special materials are needed, and special timing." Magnus asked curiously, "What kind of materials?" "We must find 7 different meteor metals. Each has different powers, and we must find them all in the same period." Einar explained to Magnus. According to the parchment left by Astrid, the real Mjolnir had to be made from 7 different god metals. First was Odin's metal, silver meteor metal, that gave war power. Second was Freyr's metal, golden-like metal that brought fertility. Third was Tyr's metal, reddish metal that gave courage. Fourth was Baldr's metal, white metal that emitted light. Fifth was Vidar's metal, dark metal that gave durability. Sixth was Vali's metal, light metal that gave speed. Seventh was Thor's metal, blue glinting metal that gave lightning power. Finding these metals could take months, said Einar. And the forging process is very dangerous. If we make a mistake, we could both die. Moreover, Mjolnir only serves those who are truly worthy. Magnus's determination never wavered. I'll take the risk, however long it takes, and we'll see if I'm worthy. There's one more thing, said Einar. During Mjolnir's creation, you can't stay in the village. Very powerful energy will be released. People could be harmed. Where will we go? To Astrid's secret cave. We'll make it there. So the decision was made. Einar would begin the greatest work of his life. Magnus settled in the village and the meteor hunting began. But this wasn't easy. Finding 7 different metals required both luck and great patience. The first meteor metal came 2 weeks later. On a snowy night, a bright light appeared in the sky. A silver glinting fireball fell beyond the mountain. Einar and Magnus climbed the mountain that night and found their first metal, Odin's metal. It was silver glinting, very hard metal. This metal gives war power, Einar explained. But it also increases the user's battle intelligence. The second metal came 3 weeks later, golden glinting, Freyr's metal. This metal was very strange. It gave warmth when touched. Freyr's metal brings fertility, said Einar. But not just material, spiritual fertility too. Finding the third metal took 2 months. Reddish Tyr's metal was a very rarely seen type. And when they found it, they realized it was very special. The metal itself seemed to burn from within. The fourth metal, Baldr's metal, was the most beautiful. It emitted white light and glowed even at night. The fifth metal, Vidar's metal, was the heaviest. It was dark-colored but incredibly durable. The sixth metal, Vali's metal, was the lightest. It was so light it seemed to not be affected by gravity. The hardest to find was the seventh metal, Thor's metal. This blue glinting metal with electrical properties only fell during very powerful storms. They had to wait 6 months. And finally, the great storm night came. That night, the sky was like a battlefield. Lightning struck one after another. Thunder shook the entire valley. And at exactly midnight, a blue fireball fell from the sky. Einar and Magnus climbed the mountain in the midst of the storm. When they found Thor's metal, it was still sparking with electricity. "This is it," shouted Magnus. "This is my metal." Now all 7 metals were complete. It was time to forge Mjolnir. Mjolnir's creation began on the night of the full moon in Astrid's secret cave. This cave was a very special place. Its walls were covered with runic symbols, and in the center was an ancient forge. Einar explained to Magnus, "This forge is not normal. It's been here for 1,000 years and has special powers. We can only unite the 7 metals in this forge." The process proved more difficult than even Einar had expected. Melting and mixing 7 different metals wasn't possible with normal methods. Each metal had a different melting temperature. "Astrid the Elder taught me a special method," said Einar. "Normal fire isn't enough. We need to kindle God fire." Einar prepared a special mixture according to the ancient formula: sulfur, fish oil, special plant extracts, and most importantly, ancient meteor dust. This mixture produced such a powerful flame that even the stone walls of the cave began to heat up. The first night, they only managed to melt the metals. Each metal produced different colors and strange sounds as it melted. The second night, the mixing process began. This was much more difficult and dangerous. Einar sang old runic songs, and Magnus accompanied him. Because according to Astrid, the metal mixture alone wasn't enough. Spiritual energy had to be added too. The power of the gods is not only in metal, Einar explained. It must also be in the soul of the one who uses it. During the mixing, strange things began to happen. An electrical tension was felt inside the cave. Magnus's tattoos were glowing. Einar's hands were trembling. The third night was shaping. This was the most critical phase. Einar poured the hot metal mixture into the special mold he had made. But the mold wasn't normal. The symbols of 7 gods were carved on it, with very complex runic writings. These symbols are written in the language of the gods, Einar explained. These symbols will give Mjolnir its power. As the metal cooled, the atmosphere of the cave completely changed. It was as if the gods had descended there. The air was filled with electricity. Strange sounds came from the walls. The gods are accepting the hammer, said Einar excitedly. Power is flowing into it, but something else is happening too. When Magnus asked what was happening, Einar looked worried. The hammer isn't just receiving power. It's also preparing a test. It will measure whether you're worthy. On the 4th morning, the hammer was ready. And it was truly magical. When Magnus first lifted the hammer, lightning struck inside the cave. The hammer seemed alive. It vibrated. In Magnus's hand, radiating energy. This is the real Mjolnir, Magnus whispered. They went outside the cave for the first test. When Magnus lightly struck a rock with the hammer, the rock split in two and sparks flew from within. Be careful, Einar warned. The hammer hasn't completely adjusted to you yet. It will take time to control its power. When Magnus swung the hammer more powerfully, it left a lightning-like trail in the air. The hammer seemed to move on its own, guiding Magnus to the right target. This isn't normal, said Magnus. The hammer is guiding me. Mjolnir is not just a weapon, Einar explained. It's also intelligent. Thor's spirit lives within it. And it's testing you. That day, Magnus tried to learn how to use the hammer, but the hammer behaved strangely. Sometimes it was very powerful, sometimes very light. Sometimes it wouldn't leave Magnus's hand. Sometimes it would fly off on its own. The hammer is trying to get to know you, said Einar. It's measuring the intentions, fears, and desires in your heart. It only gives full power to those with pure hearts. It took Magnus a week to learn to use the hammer. During this time, he experienced very strange things. Sometimes at night, the hammer would emit light while he slept. Sometimes Magnus would dream of talking with Thor. Strangest of all, the hammer didn't want to be separated from Magnus. Wherever Magnus left it, the hammer would disappear and appear beside Magnus. This is a good sign, said Einar. The hammer has chosen you. But remember, this means great responsibility. After a week, Magnus had learned to control the hammer. And now it was time to test its real power. 2 weeks after Mjolnir was completed, the feared news came. Danish warriors had crossed the Norwegian border and were attacking villages. The first attack report was brought by a refugee in terrible condition. 50 Danish warriors burned Torvik village. They enslaved the people, and now they're coming this way. Magnus was now ready, with Mjolnir in hand and 20 young warriors from the village behind him. He set out to stop the Danes. Einar was worried. Magnus, you haven't fully mastered the hammer yet. Be careful. I need practice to learn, said Magnus. And I must protect my people. The first encounter took place 10 kilometers south of Huseby village, in a forested area. 50 Danish warriors had surrounded Magnus's group of 20. The Danish leader, Ragnar Redbeard, was a famous warrior. Surrender, he shouted. We will show you mercy. Magnus stepped forward. I am Magnus Eriksson. I am the protector of these lands. You withdraw. Ragnar laughed. You're just a boy. Where do you find the courage to challenge us? Magnus raised Mjolnir. The gods gave me this courage. In his first move, when he threw the hammer into the air, lightning struck and the sky lit up. When the hammer hit Ragnar's shield, the man flew from his position and fell 5 meters away. "This is sorcery!" shouted the Danish warriors, but Magnus didn't stop. Every time he swung Mjolnir, wind arose, and with every strike, lightning flashed. The hammer never missed its target. The Danes weren't expecting to face such power. Their weapons couldn't withstand Mjolnir. Their shields were shattered. But what was truly surprising was that Magnus wasn't just fighting to kill, but also to protect. The hammer wasn't killing enemies but neutralizing them. The battle ended in an hour. The Danes fled in terror. Ragnar said his final words, "This isn't over. We'll come with a bigger army." Magnus had won, but he was worried. Einar was right. Greater trials are coming. News of Magnus defeating the Danes spread throughout all of Norway. As the story passed from mouth to mouth, it grew, and Magnus became a legendary hero. Thor's son has returned. He fights with Mjolnir. The gods protect him. In the following months, Magnus became a legend. In every battle, he routed the Danes and performed miracles with his hammer. But success began to change Magnus. The young warrior who had initially been modest and careful gradually became more arrogant. The villagers had begun to worship him. They called him Thor Magnus. And these praises were turning Magnus's head. Einar noticed this change and warned Magnus, "Son, power is changing you." "Be careful." "What do you mean?" Magnus asked. "The night you first came, you were a modest young man. Now I see arrogance in your eyes. Mjolnir is noticing this." Magnus got angry. "I am Thor's son. I deserve this power." "No one owns power," said Einar calmly. "Power is only a trust. And if misused, it's taken away." But Magnus no longer listened to Einar. Success had intoxicated him. During this process, Mjolnir was also changing. The hammer that once guided Magnus was now behaving less intelligently, working more like just a powerful weapon. When Einar saw this change, he became very worried. He remembered Astrid's warnings. Mjolnir only serves pure hearts. If arrogance enters, the hammer abandons its owner. One day, after Magnus achieved a very great victory, he came to Einar drunk. "Einar, I'm invincible with Mjolnir now. All of Norway is mine." Einar looked at Magnus and felt great sadness in his heart. This was no longer that modest young man. "Magnus, sit down. We need to talk." "What shall we talk about?" "I'm winning. I'm protecting my people." "Are you protecting your people or feeding your own ego?" Magnus got angry. "You're jealous of me. I became famous. You're just a blacksmith." These words broke Einar's heart. Magnus had completely changed. "Magnus, remember this. I didn't give Mjolnir to you. I only made it. The gods gave it to you. And the gods can take back what they give." "Nonsense! This hammer is mine now." That night, Einar read Astrid's parchment one last time. The warning written there was very clear. When arrogance comes, Mjolnir abandons its owner. In this case, the hammer must be hidden in a safe place. Einar made his decision. He would give Magnus one final warning, and if he didn't change, would leave. The next morning, Einar delivered his final message to Magnus. "Magnus, you are no longer that young man. Power has changed you. I sense Mjolnir distancing itself from you." "Einar, you're crazy. Mjolnir is with me. For now, yes. But remember, the greatest power is controlling power. You're losing control now. I am Thor's son. No one can command me." Einar sadly shook his head. "Then I have nothing more to teach you." That night, Einar packed all his belongings and wrote a secret letter. "Magnus, I'm not angry with you. Power changes everyone. I was the same when I was young. Mjolnir's true power wasn't in the metal, but in the heart of the one who used it. If there's arrogance in your heart, the hammer will abandon you. Remember Astrid the Elder's words. The greatest power is controlling power. If a real Thor is born again in the future, he will find the hammer himself. Because it's not powerful weapons, but powerful hearts that save the world. Farewell, my son." The next morning, Einar was gone. The villagers searched for him but found no trace. Einar's departure first angered, then saddened Magnus. But the wars continued, and he needed Mjolnir. Months passed, and Magnus became Norway's most famous warrior. But Einar's warning began to come true. Magnus became increasingly arrogant and merciless. He was now fighting not just for defense, but for conquest. Mjolnir was still powerful, but it wasn't magical like before. It no longer guided Magnus, working only as a powerful weapon. Most importantly, the hammer was beginning to distance itself from Magnus. Sometimes when Magnus called it, it wouldn't come. Sometimes it would fall from his hand and not return. The great fall came in the battle near Trondheim. Magnus launched a major attack against the Danes, but this time he wasn't fighting just for defense, but to feed his own ego. In the middle of the battle, at a critical moment, Mjolnir fell from Magnus's hand. Magnus called out, "Mjolnir, come to me." But the hammer didn't move. At that moment, Magnus understood. Mjolnir had abandoned him. Without the hammer, Magnus was an ordinary warrior. The Danes surrounded him, and that day Magnus Eriksson, Thor's son, lost his life. Mjolnir lay on the battlefield, but no one could touch it. Everyone who touched it felt an electric shock and immediately pulled their hand away. A few days later, the hammer disappeared. No one knew where it had gone. After leaving Magnus, Einar had moved away from the village and begun living a secret life in the mountains. But he wasn't just hiding. He was performing an important task. He was reading the secret section, written in Astrid's parchment. If Mjolnir is taken from an unworthy person, it must be hidden in a safe place until it's ready for the future true Thor. Einar was fulfilling this duty. The day Magnus died, Mjolnir had appeared beside Einar on its own. "So you were waiting for me," Einar said to the hammer. Mjolnir was no longer at its former power. It had been damaged by Magnus's arrogance. Einar had to restore its spiritual power. After months of work, Einar restored the hammer to its original state. But now he wouldn't give it to anyone. "You'll wait until the true Thor comes in the future," he said to the hammer. Einar's final task was to hide the hammer in a safe place. And the safest place was Astrid's cave. When Einar brought Mjolnir to Astrid's cave, the hammer settled on its own into the runic circle in the center of the cave. "You'll wait here," said Einar, "until the true Thor comes." But hiding Mjolnir wasn't enough. He also had to plan how the future person would find it. Einar cast a special spell. He applied a calling spell to Mjolnir. If there was truly a worthy person in the world, the hammer would call to them. Then he hid the cave entrance and placed special protections. Only a worthy person would be able to find the cave. Finally, he wrote a message for future generations. "I am Einar, smith of the gods. I made this hammer for Thor's worthy son." But power changed him, and the hammer abandoned him. Now this sacred weapon awaits the true Thor of the future. If you are reading this letter and there's no arrogance in your heart, you may try the hammer. But remember, the greatest power is using power correctly. Magnus's death and Mjolnir's disappearance created a great legend. The story was told for generations, and with each telling, it grew a little more. In the first versions, Magnus was told as a tragic hero, a young man corrupted by power but initially well-intentioned. Over time, the story changed. Magnus's flaws were forgotten, only his heroics were remembered. And Mjolnir became a legendary weapon. Who Einar was became completely forgotten. He was only remembered as the sorcerer blacksmith. This legend lived for centuries. It became part of Viking mythology, then mixed into European folklore, where Mjolnir became a complete mystery. According to some rumors, it was still hidden somewhere in Norway, waiting. In the 10th century, Snorri Sturluson collected these stories and wrote them in the Edda. But he didn't know the real story. In the 13th century, Mjolnir appeared again in German epics. This time it had gained more fantastic properties. In the 16th century, writers like Shakespeare drew inspiration from Norse mythology. In the 20th century, Hollywood found these stories and made Thor movies. In each version, the story changed, but the core remained the same. A powerful weapon serves the worthy person. In 2018, Danish farmer Lars Andersen made a strange discovery. The 1,000-year-old hammerhead he found in his field with a metal detector gave surprising results when tested in the laboratory. The metal alloy was technologically impossible for that period. It had a special mixture of meteor metals, and the craftsmanship quality was very high. In 2019, similar discoveries were made in Sweden. This time a complete hammer was found with runic writings on it. When they deciphered the writings, they were amazed. "I am Bjorn, student of Einar. I made this hammer using the method my master taught me." Archaeologists developed the Einar group hammers theory. All these hammers might have been made by the same person or workshop. In 2020, the Norwegian Institute of Genetic Research conducted an interesting study. They found a common genetic mutation in 47 families in the Scandinavian region, the actin 3 gene variation. This gene is known as the Superman gene. It increases muscle strength. And these families had been known for generations as Thor's descendants. Coincidence? Or were these really people descended from Magnus? The 2021 DNA study conducted in Sweden gave even more interesting results. All 47 families were based on a common ancestor who lived approximately 1,000 years ago. And this ancestor profile closely matched Magnus's description: tall, powerfully built, red-haired. In 2021, during road construction near Trondheim, archaeologists found a very special grave. The grave was 1,000 years old and had been made with great care. It contained blacksmithing tools, meteor metal fragments, and most interestingly, perfectly preserved parchments. When they deciphered the parchments, they experienced a great shock. These were the Mjolnir construction recipe and Einar's diary. When the skeleton's DNA was compared with modern Scandinavian populations, it emerged that this person could be the common ancestor of 23 families. The most surprising find was the final message carved into the grave wall: "Here lies Einar, student of Astrid. He made the last Mjolnir and hid it in a safe place. The hammer waits for the worthy one to come. If you are truly worthy, the hammer will find you." The grave also contained an ancient map. This map showed the location of Astrid's cave. In 2022, the Norwegian Institute of Archaeology followed Einar's map. The location on the map was on a mountain 50 kilometers north of Trondheim, difficult to access. After months of work, the excavation team found the cave. The entrance had been very secretly made and hadn't been touched for 1,000 years. When they entered the cave, they encountered an incredible sight. The walls were covered with runic writings. There was an ancient forge in the center, and most importantly, a hammer lay in the runic circle right in the middle. Was this Mjolnir? No one dared to touch the hammer, because it was felt to emit a very powerful magnetic field. Dr. Erik Hansen, the excavation team leader, when he approached the hammer with a metal detector, the device went crazy. "This hammer has a very powerful electromagnetic field," said Dr. Hansen. "This isn't normal metal." When they brought the hammer to the laboratory, the analyses gave surprising results. The hammer's metal composition contained 7 different elements, and all these elements were meteor metals very rarely found on Earth. Most interesting was that the hammer still showed electrical activity, as if it had an energy source inside. A team of scientists led by Professor Dr. Sarah Chun from MIT examined the hammer in detail. "This hammer is a technological miracle," said Dr. Chun. "The metal alloy is a mixture that even modern science has difficulty achieving." X-ray analyses showed there were very complex structures inside the hammer, as if there was a hidden mechanism. Inside, the hammer's weight was also strange. Sometimes it felt very heavy, sometimes normal. This might be related to the magnetic field. The most interesting result came with carbon dating. The hammer was truly 1,000 years old, and metal analysis showed it was really made from meteor metals. The person who made this hammer had incredible scientific knowledge for that period, said Dr. Chun. But the biggest mystery was the hammer's electrical activity. Why was the hammer still producing electricity? Einar's story and Mjolnir's discovery give us important lessons. First, that ancient technology might have been more advanced than modern science. Einar's technique for working meteor metals is difficult to apply even today. Second, how power changes people. Magnus started with good intentions, but power corrupted him. Third, that true power lies in character. Mjolnir's technical features are important, but what matters most is the heart of the person using it. The same lessons apply in the modern world. Technology is advancing, but the character of the person using it is more important. The Marvel Thor movies give the same message. Being worthy isn't just about strength, but about character. The archaeological Mjolnir is currently displayed at the Oslo Museum, but no one dares to try lifting it. Perhaps Einar was right. Perhaps the real Mjolnir is still waiting for the real Thor. And who knows? Maybe someday someone will lift that hammer and become the real Thor. But that person must remember what Einar said. The greatest power is using power correctly. Because history shows us that powerful weapons alone mean nothing. The character of the person using them is everything. Einar's story is finished, but his message continues. True power is hidden in the heart, and only those with pure hearts can use true power. Maybe the real Thor is you. But first you need to cleanse the arrogance from your heart. Because Mjolnir's true power isn't in the metal, it's in the soul of the person who carries it.